It's 2025. Headlines across the globe report that Donald Trump has frozen humanitarian aid to South Africa.
Of aid to South Africa and offer white Afrikaans farmers asylum is based on what many in this country say is a false narrative. The reality is far removed from Trump's executive.
US President Donald Trump has cut financial aid to South Africa over a land law aimed at addressing the country's apartheid past.
The reason? According to him, the South African government is turning a blind eye to violence against white farmers and encouraging illegal land seizures.
US President Donald Trump has officially signed an executive order freezing financial aid to South Africa. Now, the decision follows his earlier warnings and comes in response to South Africa's new land reform laws.
The results? The freeze impacted health programs, youth employment initiatives, educational grants, and medication supply chains for HIV and AIDS. When I first saw this, I believed it would be chaotic for African nations and leaders until I stumbled across this interview. Here, you have a journalist asking Ambassador Arikana Shiombori Kwao, the former ambassador of the African Union to the US, how African leaders reacted to what was happening. And her response was unexpected.
I can tell you right now, the majority of African leaders, and not just African leaders, but leaders in the developing world, are celebrating the exit of USAID.
She then went on to expose how vicious aid is in Africa.
Talking about government advocacy, when you look at it on paper, it all looks really good, but they're actually wolf in sheep's clothing.
So I decided to dig deeper. Is it actually the case? What is the real purpose of foreign aid?
All the way from the United States, all the way from Britain, and access the most remote part of your country that you in your country cannot access. It is the most stupid thing.
I was surprised by a lot of what I found, and I wonder what you know about the topic. Let me ask you two quick questions. For which continent was foreign aid first designed? A. Africa, Asia, or C. Europe? And the question two, what percentage of foreign aid money do you think stays in the recipient country's economy? A. 70%, 40%, or less than 30%? Most people get at least one of these wrong. Keep your answers in mind, we'll return to them shortly. Each year, over $200 billion flows around the world in the name of aid, and Africa receives a significant share of it. But where does it actually go, and how is it structured? Aid operates through three main channels. The first one, international NGOs. Organizations like Oxfam Save the Children operate in remote villages and urban slums. They deliver food, healthcare, and education services during various global crises. They are funded mostly through private donations. Then you have the government aid agencies such as USAID, FCDO, and GIZ in Germany. The funding comes directly from the taxpayers of those countries. They implement programs in global health, disaster relief, and socio-economic development. And lastly, the multilateral institutions. Bodies like the IMF, World Bank, and various UN agencies provide loans and grants to countries with their funding coming from member fees and loans. But when and why did these institutions emerge? To understand how we got here, let's rewind the clock. It's July 1944 in a quiet town in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods. 44 allied nations gather to plan how the world will rebuild after the devastation of World War II. From this summit, two major institutions are born, the World Bank and the IMF. The IMF was created to promote global monetary cooperation, ensure financial stability, and facilitate international trade, while the World Bank was designed to provide long-term loans and technical assistance to help countries rebuild infrastructure and grow their economies. Its early focus was reconstruction, rebuilding bridges, factories, and railways in Europe. Over time, its mission evolved to include poverty reduction and development assistance in lower-income countries. So the first continent recipient of foreign aid wasn't Africa, it was Europe, which answers question 1. Through the Marshall Plan, the United States sent over $13 billion That's more than $150 billion today to help Western Europe recover after World War II. Once Europe was established, focus shifted. The Cold War was underway. By 1947, a new ideological conflict emerged: capitalism versus communism. A few years later, civil rights movements and decolonization were shaping global politics. In Africa, one nation after another gained independence, but many were left with weak institutions and fragile economies. Western nations wanted to ensure newly independent countries aligned with their economic values. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union aimed to expand its sphere of influence. Countries like Ghana were courted by both sides. So, to support allies and counter Soviet influence, US President John F. Kennedy created USAID in 1961. On paper, it aimed to expand education, build infrastructure, and therefore reduce poverty. But some researchers suggest its parallel goal was geopolitical, to keep newly independent countries within Western ideology. Over the years, signature programs followed. PEPFAR in 2003, targeting HIV and AIDS, reportedly saving millions of lives. Millennium Challenge Corporation in 2004 focused on economic growth. World Bank infrastructure loans, building roads, power grids, and dams across Africa. But while Europe was rebuilt with $150 billion in less than a decade, why don't we see the same pattern in Africa after trillions spent and decades in projects? Do these projects actually work?
Show me one country that USAID was in and education improved. Show me what country where USAID was in and healthcare improved.
A 2020 Loyola University study found that many foreign aid projects in Africa struggle due to limited local ownership, lack of context-specific planning, and over-reliance on foreign consultants. The results? Programs often lack sustainability once donor support ends. Similarly, a 2023 study highlighted a growing disconnect between the success metrics reported by donors and the underground realities faced by recipients. It concluded that many aid initiatives that appear successful on paper fail to build long-term impact within the local communities. One major reason for this disconnect is the phenomenon known as boomerang aid, where the aid money technically leaves the donor country but ends up returning through contracts awarded to companies and workers from the donor nation itself. Let's take the example of a USAID-funded school construction project in Uganda between 2009 and 2013. Rather than hiring local construction firms and suppliers, the project was largely managed by US-based contractors who imported materials and employed foreign consultants. While schools were built, the opportunity to create jobs, support Ugandan businesses, and strengthen the local construction capacity was largely missed. This limits what economists call the multiplier effect, the idea that an investment in infrastructure creates jobs and boosts demand for local supplies. Those jobs and purchases mean more income for local workers and businesses. That additional income is then spent on goods and services within the same economy, setting off a chain reaction that lifts the wider community. When foreign aid skips local workers and industries, that chain reaction never happens.
American taxpayer needs to know the billions of dollars that are being given to USAID, a fraction is making it to the people.
According to multiple sources, only about 30 or less % of foreign aid remains within the recipient country's economy. Answer to question 2 was C, less than 30%. The rest, it circles back to donor countries in the form of tied contracts that require recipient nations to purchase goods and services from donor-based companies. Critics argue that this structure favors the donors more than the recipients. It builds dependency rather than resilience, and even other African leaders have been very vocal about the fact that it is used as a political tool.
Whoever gives you aid controls your life.
But let's not forget the elephant in the room. According to Transparency International's 2023 Corruption Perceptions Index, More than half of sub-Saharan African countries scored below 30 out of 100, indicating widespread public sector corruption. In some cases, aid funds have vanished into ghost projects, inflated contracts, or offshore accounts. It has become Africa's biggest barriers to development, possibly even greater than the flaws of foreign aid itself. In other cases, they even go hand in hand. Government officials' ability to pocket some of the aid money becomes an incentive for them to keep the country poor, because poverty means more aid and therefore more money for them in the long run. So here is what we know now. Foreign aid wasn't designed for low-income countries. It was created to rebuild Europe after World War II, and it worked. Western Europe was largely reconstructed in less than a decade. Africa, on the other hand, has received aid for decades, and yet many sub-Saharan nations still face widespread poverty. Aid often doesn't stay local, and when it does work, it creates dependency, a tool that's sometimes used for political leverage. Then there is corruption, a powerful force that diverts funds away from citizens who need them the most. So we end up with a critical question. Why isn't this flawed system being fixed? Why is Africa still poor and unstable?
Why does such a continent that did so much to help Europe recover continue to be so poor?